those don't just happen. At the start of the business, it was all like, right, how can we do this thing a little bit faster, quicker than anyone else? We'd take photos and everyone else would be like, yeah, I'll edit them tomorrow and they'll be up tomorrow afternoon. We'd be like, cool, you up to 3 a.m? I'm up to 3 a.m. They'll be up by 3 a.m. Done. So the next morning when everyone woke up, photos are up. And now we've got to get to the point where it's no longer how hard we can work. That's the next stage. We're in this castle of AllMarkOne doing what we do, and then everyone's got their bow and arrows and they're trying to like shoot us down with something. And either we just work even harder and we build our castle taller and taller, or we just try and build multiple moats outside of AllMarkOne.
Hey, what is up? Welcome to Last Show Counts. In today's episode, we have the owner of AllMarkOne in the house. Please welcome Rory Cruickshank.
Hi guys. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming on, man. This is a really fun one. I think obviously we'll get into the story of how it happened, but also I think really interesting. We've discussed before the kind of crossover between rowing and business. So hopefully this is one where we can kind of get into that a little bit more. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, excited to be here. It's a busy few set of weeks coming up. But
yeah, we
gathered in early.
Snuck you in just before it was about to get absolutely mental. Yeah. Cool then. So yeah, how we normally start really is just is how did you get into rowing in the first place?
So I started rowing at school. I went to Norwich School, great school in Norfolk, and just wasn't very good at the other sports. Like not too tall, I'm not too big. Like the standard sports, hockey, rugby, didn't really fit in for me. And when it was like snowing in the E-team rugby team, when I was like under 13, and the head of sport was like, does anyone want to go and do some rowing instead? I jumped at that pretty fast. So
you're not the first person. Again, we had Ben yesterday. He was like, yeah, I did want to do cricket. And he said he hated rowing when he started.
So did you start off rowing or coxing initially?
It was very much pushing it to call it rowing. We like played around in boats, like those like plastic cast singles type things with the massive riggers and stuff like that. So we just went and screwed around in those for about a year and a half, and then I started coxing after that.
It's pretty good though. Again, like that's how you get, like, if you don't enjoy it first, you're very likely to like go further in it. So I think it's important.
It is weird though. It's like that hidden, it'll be really fun. You can go and row and it's really sunny, and when it's not sunny, we can go inside and go on the ergos. And then and then like 2 years later, they're like, hail, no, get in the bow loader. We're out in the hail. Yeah, didn't really sign up for that when I first started, but you kind of get used to it.
They never tell you all the good details that come with rowing, all the hard mornings and everything. And
wanting to quit rugby because I was cold and wet, replacing it with rowing where I get even colder and even wetter was probably not a super smart decision.
With no way to warm up as well on top of that.
Coxing in a bow loader was like, you just lie down in an ice bath for like 3 hours. Maybe in the space of 2 sessions, yeah.
Yeah, this is a trend that you see more people picking up now. So you might say that you were ahead of the curve with that.
There is still some fun in it. I remember teaching novices, like quite often, you're like very new. It's maybe not the best day. It's a bit windy. The coxers know what they're doing. Have to constantly stop and reset the boat, and everyone's like completely confused what they're doing. And I'm like, I promise you, it gets better. Like
it'll be fun in the summer, we promise.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. It's so different. Like the entrance is quite difficult. There's like so much to learn. There's like quite a lot of. I guess it's quite a barrier to entry. Like you kind of have to have the mindset of being like, this isn't great, but like maybe I can go delayed gratification.
It's just that bit of like, if you don't do it, you're going to be so behind the curve 6 months later when you come to summer racing. So everyone kind of just like has to do the winter bit, because as long as everyone else is doing it, you're at the same level. If you're the one person that taps out of the winter bit, you're going to be pretty far back in the summer.
Yeah, the only thing worse than having to deal with winter weather is then being scrabbling at the back of the squad.
Yeah,
unfair for the summer racing. But also like the barrier to entry comes down to the fact that when you start teaching people how to row, you first have to explain it's a completely new language that you're going to have to learn, new set of words, new set of calls and everything. And I think this might have been especially true like with Coxing as well.
Yeah, the whole like, I never really caught onto it a huge amount. I'm sure when I was like 13, 14, I was trying to use all the correct words, but actually I kind of realized once I got to about 16, 17, that just speaking to everyone like your mate, like not trying to do it in a very specific way or not trying to do it the perfect way, tended to get better results out of the athletes and out of me as well. So like, yeah, I'm trying to think of a good way to explain it, but it's just one of those things of like, everyone kind of sees Coxing in videos, or especially like American Cox recordings is like a very like controlling type of way of doing it, and you like elongate your words and stuff like that. But actually, I always found that just speaking to them like normal people, at the end of the day, they're just like your mates. You go and hang out in the pub afterwards type of thing. So
I think you've got to play to your strengths. Like, you've got to go with what you did when we were teaching Cox. It's like, obviously, to give them examples, you kind of need to pull up some videos. Quite often, they'll be like quite polished, quite aggressive. Say a Henley final, something like Harry Brightmore Henley final, amazing, but like incredibly polished and aggressive. And then you would have a Cox like that's just not me. Like, I'm not aggressive. I'm not going to get loud. And you're like, no, I don't want you to copy. Like, I want you to like kind of take examples, but then you do it your way. And like some people, very calm and controlled, other people that are aggressive. Like, you have to like play to your strength.
It's pretty Coxing when you're just training is pretty boring. Like, you do a lot more watching and a lot more like understanding than you actually do speaking. So trying to teach someone how to do that is quite difficult, because you can't make someone watch it, because they will get bored within 10 seconds. And they're like, you haven't said anything yet. And you're like, yeah, you don't really have to be honest. But like, yeah, it's definitely a difficult one, teaching people how to stop.
Learning that pauses are okay, is it? It's a fun one. Just like when it's like constant stream of consciousness. Like, no, you can give them 5 strokes to.
You can stop. You've told them to do something for 10 strokes. Count to 10. Let them do the whole thing.
Yeah, you don't have to say something literally every single stroke. And then also another funny thing is like listening back to like Coxing recordings, but not from racing, but from training. And it's like, yeah, tap on, do this, do that. Like, there's not like a lot of action all packed in one place. Like,
pretty boring. It is pretty boring.
Yeah. I generally think as well, like one of the major benefits of rowing is like, even in a cold day, you get out, you get up early, you're a bit tired and it's kind of cold and it sucks, but also like, you got your workout in, and like for the rest of the day you got to work out, and like that was always like missing for the Cox. I sort of feel as a crew should be a lot more appreciative. Someone's come out and done all of this, yet not had a workout, got way more cold than you didn't warm up. Like, I still annoy, I've said before, like it really annoys me when Coxes get mistreated a bit, because it's just like, dude.
I got used to it. Like J15, I remember seeing that. I had a great coach at school called Chris, who was also a Cox. He kind of taught me everything that I know now. But it was that sit down, it's just like, oh yeah, so like, is there a way that I can stay like a little bit warmer or a little bit drier? And the response was just like, no. You can put on as many waterproof layers as you want, but after 18k in a Cox 4, the water will get in somehow. Like, you will be inside a bin bag of water by the end of the session. No matter whether you're wearing 4 sets of salopettes or a set of leggings, like, you're going to get soaked.
Especially in a boat loader.
Yeah, I learned it from coaching a little bit. And I first started coaching, I was on the bike in Henley. So you warm up just like an athlete. And then in Oxford, we coach from the launch. And it's just that slowly creeping. There's just more and more cold. And then you're coming back in like in the rain, like.
We had roofs on the launches at Brookes, which was very nice. When everyone would go out in pairs or Coxes 4s or whatever, or if they were like 5/8s and there were 7 Coxes, 2 Coxes up on the launch, you just sit under the roof and like, yeah, this is a lot nicer than being out in that boat.
Yeah, that's the way to learn. Like, obviously you've got to learn by doing, but the next best thing would be to sit in the launch.
Just sit and watch.
Yeah. Sure. Cool. So at school, you did get some success as well as a Cox?
Yeah. So wasn't super common at Norwich at the time. We had one athlete before me that did really good. Adam, who went to Munich and stuff. He was really good at rowing. But yeah, I think I was the first Cox to go and trial from Norwich. But then, yeah, first one to then get selected for Coop and then Worlds the year after as well.
What years were that then?
So 2016, so that was Coop in 2016, which was pretty quiet because it was Olympic year. So everyone was spending their money on the Olympic teams. So that was a very quiet Coop year. And then 2017 in Lithuania for Worlds.
Nice. How was that? Different place?
Yeah, it was very, very different. Poland was that year, the 2016 year, we had done loads of trips away. We'd been to Bruges and we'd been to Ghent and all those type of things. So it was quite nice to like carry that on. And then the year after, we kind of didn't really go anywhere. We'd been to Ghent, but that was about it. And Lithuania was a big old shock to the system. It was very different. And I think Coop in general is very different to Worlds. Like the whole thing about having like the US team and the Australian team and the New Zealand team and the South African team and stuff. They're big teams and they turn up in force. So it's quite nice to have like that type of race where usually international races that most British people go and do is like Ghent or Duisburg or something, which is still a relatively small event.
Yeah.
It comes down to it.
You don't get that like in Coop with all of those teams from around the world. It's not even like full European championships. It's only like a select few countries. So you got France, Spain, Italy, Germany, etc.
Yeah,
oh, there's Germany?
Just raced Italy. Germany was still banned when I went to Coop.
Why were they banned?
I think they sent like their junior worlds team to Coop or something, and that's like against the rules. So when I was there, they weren't allowed to race. I think they're allowed to race now. I think they're back in now. But yeah.
So funny thing about that Coop, I actually watched it live. I happened to be in Poland at the time on Lake Malta, in Poznan.
It was good. It was hot. It was really fast. We were in this like Wintec International with aluminium riggers. It was a pretty heavy boat at the time, but we were like flying in that boat.
I did in 2010. I did the Cox 4. We went to Belarus, which is like time travel. That is a weird country. You can't even fly there from the UK, so you fly into Poland and then get bussed across. And even though they knew it was obviously the World Championships and like there were buses of rowers coming over, they were still holding everyone at the border for like 4 hours, just like flexing, like we're in charge here. But yeah, so we went and did the Cox 4, and I can't remember what country it was now. There's a photo of us somewhere. Someone turned up with a wooden boat, like a wooden Cox 4. And if they'd been in the other heat, they would have made the final. They missed out by one space in the hot final. And we got a picture in front. Imagine standing in front of it and the rack. There's a full wooden varnish boat with World Rowing sticker on it. It was just like, it's like mind blowing. Like we weren't the only ones going to get photos. Like fair play to those boys as well. They're like, that must have been heavy.
Yeah, heavy boats.
Yeah, but it doesn't make that much of a difference if you're a fast crew.
I think there is quite a big difference between like wooden boats and not. I know that some of my mates were filming at the Boys in the Boat film, and I think we're quite good mates with Wintec who made the boats for the movie, and they're carbon fibre underneath and then wooden skins because they were a bit too heavy. Just as wooden boats, they were struggling a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I think also like just for like filming, like you need something that's going to be consistent, and like a old wooden boat with like a random bunch of rows in, it's going to start getting wobbly, and someone's going to pull the rig off the side of it, trying to yank it in. Yeah, that's cool. I heard about that as well. I thought it was pretty cool. I thought it was like a vinyl sticker. I
think the top was a vinyl sticker, but I'm not sure about the.
It might have actually. That was cool. 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 So having then done Junior Worlds, I mean, in that experience, like moving into like life as a under 23, I guess, like, did you want to keep rowing? Was that something?
So I knew that I wanted to carry on. After Coop, I'd got a message from Brookes talking about whether I wanted to start looking at coxing here. And then as I got into like Worlds and it was springs and my name started to get out there a little bit more, so American uni started getting in touch. So I spoke to Washington and Cal quite a bit, but decided that like the contract didn't really look like what I wanted to go for. And Brookes was kind of where all my mates were going. I remember us being sat in Lithuania in like the big crew room, and we would all just like watch one Brookes video, one Washington video, one Brookes video, one Washington video, just like trying to decide where we were all going to go. I then did a gap year and all of my mates went to Brookes, and I was like, well, that's the decision chosen, isn't it? Like I went to Worlds with a load of really good athletes, and then they all went off to Brookes, and I was like, well, all the really good athletes.
So to name a few of those guys.
So I went to Worlds with Matt Rowe, Henry Blois-Brooks, Seb Newman, Barney Fox, those type of lads.
Okay, cool.
Really good. So yeah, like Shiplake, Shrewsbury lot. Still kind of like the standard at Brooks, like a lot of Shrewsbury guys, a lot of Shiplake guys. And then took a gap year out, was a boatman at Norwich School, kind of stuck around at home for another year. It's probably a good bit, meant that I didn't have to Cox for a year, which was a really nice break. Kind of got me used to the admin and logistics side of rowing, which I really enjoy. And then went to Brooks and cracked back on with the Coxing as soon as I got there.
Awesome. And then I guess, so we're going to rewind a little bit as to when AllMarkOne started getting involved with this. So this was kind of as you came up at the same time.
Yeah.
When did you first have the idea for it? How did it like come about?
So I had me and two of my mates, Rich and Alex. We were all kind of like into rowing photography, very into rowing at the time. There weren't a huge number of us. Nowadays, you can just like have a bit of a scroll on Instagram and find loads of people that are into rowing. Back then, Instagram had basically only just started, so we were still on Twitter. Like the initial AllMarkOne group chat was just on like a random Twitter conversation. And we were all talking about like how we were all going to the same event and we could each like photograph each other and stuff like that. And we were like, oh yeah, cool. And then we'd find other people being like, oh, can you photograph us? And then we'll pay you for them and stuff like that. So kind of like grew and grew and grew. But at the start, it was literally just to like take some photos of rowing and then see how big we could make like social media accounts. That's pretty much it. We had some guys from Walton, who I'm still good mates with now, James Pickering, who had a like 3,500 follower account. We were like, that's it. We got to beat him. That's the goal. And at the time we had like 40 followers. So it was like a long way off. But it was that like constant just strive to try and beat the next biggest person.
That was
Stick with that at the moment.
sounds like the rower's mentality kind of being applied to other ways, which is like what we were saying about business.
It's pretty savage. It's like I'm very competitive and I'm not very good at holding that back in the business sense as well.
Yeah.
We went in and undercut everyone by 60-70% on pricing because we could and because that would make us the most competitive.
Yeah.
And like we could have gone in and undercut everyone by 10%, but that wouldn't have been as hard hitting as what we did. And it's kind of the same way that we do now on a completely different level. We've kind of done the complete opposite now.
If you're in an industry where you can come in and undercut someone by 60%, it probably means that someone's been operating on their own for a bit too long. So that's the free market.
Yeah, very true. And it's the one thing that we keep in mind at AllMarkOne all the time is like, we are now like the biggest rowing photography company in the UK. We're one of very few, but the prices try not to change as much as possible. We've done one price increase in 8 years now.
That's pretty good considering how expensive and stuff have gone up. Yeah.
And it was only when we had to register for VAT as well. So that was a big tough one.
You got to do what you got to do. And just to put into perspective, so you went from like having 40 followers in just a few years to now having over 15,000 on Instagram.
Yeah, I think we're nearly at 16,000 now, but it was very slow for the first 2 to 3 years. It was very much finding our feet. Like we'd take like 5 photos at national schools and be like, cool, that was really successful. We'll have 5 Instagram posts.
Yeah.
And then we went to Henley and we just did the junior cruise and stuff like that. It's like growing and growing and growing. And now we are the biggest team at Henley and at schools and Henley Women's. And we try and do every event and cover absolutely everyone.
Yeah.
Because now we're at the size where we can get away with that without losing quality.
I think that's absolutely the best way to do it. Like there's a lot of people try and like bite off more than they can chew. Like the fact that you've like slowly gained and like organic growth and those things are really important.
We've had opportunities to expand into the States or expand into other countries, but actually putting that effort and that finance back into the UK means that we can continue to try and like grow the community we got here a little bit more.
And it's working well because obviously you're now an official media partner for quite a lot of those events. Even at Nat Schools, we were also there. You and AllMarkOne had the biggest tent as well.
That's the aim. Yeah, I think we've got the way that I've always seen it is it's a bit of like the fake it till you make it mentality, but there's also the whole like being a big brand is quite cool. And if you can be quite supportive of the rest of the community, they'll be supported back.
Yeah.
So whether it's doing all the Nat Schools t-shirts with UL to do all the medalist ones with rival kit, or we go and do all the wristbands throughout the season, and we go out and give free photos at GB trials and stuff like that, or boat race fixtures. Having that like brand image size hopefully means that when it comes to national schools, Henley Royal, Head of the River, the first people that people think of was us.
Yeah, that's awesome. To roll it back then a little bit. So obviously at school you're kind of just doing this for fun. Then you move to uni. Are you still that's kind of as a fun thing?
Still kind of doing it for fun. Brooks Coxing really took over my life. I think I'm quite someone that will go like 100% in on one project. And university kind of like split that quite a lot. We don't really see the full extent of that because COVID hit at the start of my second year and then was all the way through to the end of my third year. So we don't really see what type of effects me not being able to put 100% into the company actually does. But as Brooks got more intense, so first year was pretty 50-50. I did a lot of AllMarkOne stuff, a lot of Brooks stuff. So my second and third years, it was near on 100% Brooks Coxing. Like I was chasing after wins and stuff like that. And I have a great team at AllMarkOne that means that actually the level of coverage did not drop at all. Like Lucinda and Rich, and at the time it was George and Dent as well, who have since left, basically ran AllMarkOne for that final year. And that made a big difference, especially at Henley when I'm out racing 5 days in a row.
Yeah.
Being able to know that the coverage is going up as normal made a massive change.
And obviously that speaks to probably the way that you run the company as well. The fact that people tend to gravitate towards working with other people that they like and that they can trust and respect. So if you were able to sort of like trust your team to run such big events when you had to go off and do your thing, that probably speaks to a lot to the company culture that you've developed at AllMarkOne.
It speaks a lot to the people that we've got in the company as well. Like everyone is equally as competitive and like well driven. No one AllMarkOne is a slacker, which is really, really impressive. And I think it's one of those important points for the business. The way that we look after our staff is dependent on how well they work and all that type of stuff. So I think I've said it in a video before, but each photographer gets paid depending on how much they sell. So it kind of helps promote, same with me, but it helps promote everyone to like get the photos up a little bit quicker and make sure the photos are slightly higher quality and they're edited right and they're easy to get access to and Instagram posts look good and stuff like that. Like it's all about like trying to help push people to just make it like 1% better every single time.
So this is exactly what I'm sort of thinking that when we talk about how rowing crosses over to business, essentially you've made it performance based.
Yeah.
And that's if there are benefits to performing better, exactly the same as in rowing, then you're going to want to perform better. And then if you're starting with people who have that mentality, that's like the perfect melting pot.
I also think it's like we're trying not to make it a unconditional requirement, but I think that's the right word. But like at the moment, everyone that wears AllMarkOne has rowed or has done some sort of rowing in the past. Lots of them to a very high level, some of them not to a high level. But I think that like little bit of having an interest in which club is which and what type of boat are they in and all of those type of things just helps us in the grand scheme of things. If we started pulling in random photographers, that would probably help the business side a little bit more. Like they'd be a bit cheaper. We could use them a little bit more easily. Those type of things. You kind of like pick them up and drop them off because they're able to do loads of different things. That side of rowing wouldn't be done as much. Like you don't know whether you're sat on a start line taking a photo of Eton or Eton Excelsior, and there can be sometimes quite a big difference.
And it also speaks to like the mindset of the people that you employ at your company as well. Because if you all came from like sort of this similar origin point, which is rowing and training hard and turning up pushing when you don't want to, working with your team, I'm sure that all like translates on top of that as well.
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, it's the same with Rowgear. You know, I've tried employing people who aren't rowers, and especially when you're fixing equipment, it's just so difficult to have that feel.
quite difficult to have that conversation of just like, so what are you feeling? And then they explain it, and then you kind of understand exactly straight away what the problem is.
Yeah, things like that. But then also, like, again, for a similar thing for us, like part of expanding Rowgear in the last couple of years is about kind of being a business of rowers in rowing, which I think makes a lot more sense to people, or is a lot easier to like get behind, because it doesn't feel like it's just this random company with these random people coming in to take your money.
It's about supporting something that's also going to support the community back.
Yeah.
I think that's quite a big part, is that, like it's all about, if you buy photos from us, and let's say you're a big school, for example, we've got a lot of big schools that come buy lots of photos at Nat schools from us, and you can sit there and be like, your total bill was this, but actually about half of that money is probably going to go to us going to photograph 3 of those guys at Junior Worlds, and 3 of the girls at Coop, and then one girl at the Home Internationals, and all that type of stuff. And it's like that money kind of stays in one big circle, and then over time that'll then get fed back into GB trials or whatever, and those type of things. And it's quite important that everyone at AllMarkOne keeps that same like that too. It's quite easy just to like start pulling the money out, but that doesn't help the community grow anymore.
Absolutely. And that's a big part of this podcast. It was like, we're sat here going like, there's a lot of people in rowing with a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, or with their own small businesses and like fantastic stuff, but there's not necessarily like a platform to get it out there. And like, if we can help everyone help each other, then like you said, like grow a community. And like just being out on the circuit this year, like talk to other people about new ideas. Like we talked a little bit, I'm sure we can talk later, about like different regatta ideas and bits and pieces like that. And like it's a different, it's sort of one of us kind of thing, like you're a rower, you're in the gang.
You understand which events run well, which events are not running so well, and all those type of things. Like it's one of those easy ones of like, if you've been there and done it, you can probably understand it a little bit. And then you can always like teach, but as long as that like base level of understanding is there, I think it makes our life teaching photographers a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely.
So initially you started off with AllMarkOne as a photography company, but you've also expanded since. So you don't just do photos, you offer other types of media coverage.
Yeah, so up until about 2019, bordering 2020 at that point, we like primarily just photos. Lucinda, who works at AllMarkOne, started doing some like little video projects here and there, and they started doing really well, but that was very much like a hobby based side of it. We were kind of doing Instagram Reels before Instagram Reels and TikToks were a thing, if that makes sense. So just like we just post like a short video clip, and then that'd be it. And Instagram wasn't super happy about that at the time, as in like they would do just as well as our photo posts, whereas now video posts do significantly better.
Yeah, I think people forget like Instagram was photos. It was photos, and people just looked at their stream, like there was no like rolling through the video. Like it's crazy how quickly this changes.
So it all changes so much, and now you can upload a 3-minute video and skip along sections. Before then it was like, no, you're in for the long haul here. If you want to watch the 9th minute of this video, you better be up for watching the first 8 minutes of this video, because that's all it is. And if your mum calls halfway through, you've got to start again from scratch type thing. But
we've had a funny thing with these podcast videos, like the long format. Like we find like people sort of over the age of 25 are like, we love the long format, like listen to it in the car. And then people under the age of 25 are like, we need shorter videos. We want short videos. We want it short and sweet. Or like hit it.
Yeah, the little clips channels, those.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then like 2020, 2021 started coming about, and we had like Wintech took a really big chance with us and said, actually, can you come and video some of our events for us? And that was like a pretty big step. Like we hadn't done a huge amount in the past. That was big odd risk for them. Like video isn't cheap to like get decent videographers, and editing takes many, many hours and stuff like that. So it's a pretty big jump to take, but I think like that really paid off for both them and us, and we've seen both social media like channels grow pretty much. And then in the last like year and a half, we've seen everyone else start to kind of jump on that trend too. Is like we made, I believe, the first ever Empacker video advert at Henley last year, which was like pinch yourself moment. I've been like, wait, so the brand that doesn't really advertise wants to make an advert with us. That's pretty cool. And that was like a whole different, not like problem, but it was a very different video that we had to create because you can't go down the same marketing route for loads of different companies. So then we became more of like a marketing agency and brand than we were photo and video. But it's kind of all the way back to that, like we're all kind of rowing nerds at the end of the day. So if you like one of our photos and you're like, I want to put it in a book, we can make a book. If you want to put it on the wall of a gym, we can find some waterproof material that means that it's not going to mold on the side of the gym. If you want to hang it up in a frame, we can mock it all up. And then if you want to put your Nat Schools medal in it as well, we'll come up with a way to do that. Like we're not like super spread out, but we're no longer the niche of like, oh no, we take photos, and if you want the photo, you can buy the photo. We can now do anything else.
Your fans are rowing, like that's the important thing. Like that's like the people we've wanted to talk to on this and stuff. It's like you said, people are in it. And like again, like going back to saying Wintech taking a chance on you, but like that's another thing about being part of being in the industry, being like one of those companies, like getting to know people, doing the circuit with people. Like you want to take chances on people who are like, you feel like are on your team already.
Yeah. And it's that unwritten rule in rowing that some outsiders that then move into rowing don't really click straight away with, but it's that like unwritten rule of you look after me, we'll really look after you back. And it's that happens all the time, whether it's just like I know that this one job is quite a lot, but the rest of the year will pay itself off like 3 times over if you give us one shot at this.
Yeah.
And then it happens like both ways around. Like someone will be like, I can't get this many photos right now because my budget at this club does not stretch to it right now. However, give me a shot, we'll see what happens. 3 years down the line, they're head of rowing at some other place, and suddenly like that, like 150 quid of photos that you gave away in the start.
Yeah, everyone moves around a lot, and like we've had the same thing with servicing. Like people have come in, got us in with one job, and then they've moved to 3 or 4 different clubs, and they've kept us going. And like on the one hand, like it's fun, like having like not just doing the same thing. So if someone say, "Oh, but can you know, I know you don't really do fix that equipment, but there's something wrong with that. Can you have a look at it?" Like the other day, my a friend of mine has the gym in Henley, Toby Garbutt. Has got the health and wellness gym that the Leander guys now train in. And he was like, I've got 2 treadmills that don't work. I was like, well, I mean, I don't know how to fix treadmills, but like I've got a toolbox. So we just pulled it apart and found the problem. I soldered some wires back together and stuff, and like we got it going. And like number one,
if you've got like I don't know, Land Rover Discovery that's broken down, call Tom.
Oh God,
replace a turbo for you or something.
Well, I can see cars as well, but I'm pretty busy. But yeah, on the one hand, it's fun to like have a different challenge. And I've had the same thing as you. Like, there's clubs where like the budget hasn't stretched or whatever, but like when you're trying to maintain a standard and you want to make sure the equipment's out there, and there was the same thing. Like when we went back registered, that meant the clubs that weren't back registered were paying like 20% more. So I would just take the price off. And I'm doing it for less, but like, again, like being in this industry, knowing people, because you're not just like a nameless, faceless company. They remember that, you know.
It's a really big part, and it's the same as what we did when we went VAT registered and the prices started going up, and then interest rates and all that type of stuff. Inflation started going up, and everyone that's been booked in with us beforehand pays the same price that they did before, because it was such a big jump. Them not only trusting video content, but also us to produce video content as like a group of kids that like just did it for fun. And we were like, but we think we can probably sell you more. Like we can sell more of your stuff by making some videos, and that was like a pretty big jump that might seem to have paid off. So
I think loyalty does pay off, but I think the other reason why outside companies might not do as well is because all rowers are insane, and we can just spot normal people a mile off. It's just we're a different breed.
Yeah, you can tell. Like you scroll through like videos. You just like keep scrolling through social media, and you're like, I tick quite a lot of those boxes. Yeah, that's not good.
Just have to like listen to a rower talk for like 2 minutes, and like if you,
they're easy to spot.
It's a different language.
A mile off. Yeah, and even if they're not talking about rowing, you can spot.
I remember being back at Nat schools, and we haven't done events for a while. We've been focused on other things. This year we've kind of come back into it, and just remembering like, oh yeah, like this is a place where like you're absolutely fine to just walk around in just an all-in-one, like in a public. I remember when I finished rowing, like going to a public gym and being like, I can't just train in an all-in-one and a ripped t-shirt anymore. Like I have to look presentable.
You also can't just like drip liters of sweat on the floor without anyone being like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I had at one gym I went to, I remember they had signs on all the cardio machines saying like, please don't use this equipment for more than 15 minutes at a time. And I was like, what are we doing here?
How am I meant to do my 90-minute ergo?
15 minutes? What the hell? Yeah. This isn't a gym. Yeah, we're different breed.
Yeah. And I think that's really key. And you find some people that join the community jump straight away. And we've got a few people like that, not at AllMarkOne, but that work with us. They've kind of like stood on the sidelines for, I don't know, 6 months and been like, okay, the only way that I'm going to make this work is by like becoming one of them. And then they kind of like jump in 100%. It pays off straight away.
That's awesome. That kind of leads into, like you said, it just kind of happened, you getting into video and things like that. But I'm very interested to find out, did you feel the transition moving from a company that does photos and videos to a brand? Like, was that a conscious move, or is it just kind of organically?
It was slowly becoming one, but it was never really like conscious. We'd always kind of just do what we think was cool at the start. That was all the way up until about 2021. And then as I stopped Coxing, as I left Coxing, it was a bit like, right, we're gonna give this like as much as we can. The entire team got behind it, and it made a huge difference, whether it's just like brand awareness and everyone kind of understanding us. We always had that like same year group, like that 2019 year group, J14 all the way up to university rowers, knew who we were. That was really great. 2020 came around, and the older lot dropped off, and some people left school and decided not to start rowing, but the younger ones kept getting older. And then 2021 came around, and we didn't really do that many events because either we weren't allowed to turn up, or we were the only ones allowed to turn up, and there weren't that many people racing, and so many events were non-J14, non-J15. It was just get the 16, 17 and 18s racing, mainly because the 14s and 15s might not have trained at all yet.
Yeah.
But it meant that going into, I think it was the 2022 to 23 season. So, no, that was this year.
Yeah.
2021 to 2022 season. We went into it knowing that we've got about half of the uni rowers that we used to have, and we only had J16, 17 and 18 rowers. And it was like, we've got a lot of work to do to get 14s and 15s back and the other half of the university rowers back. And that was a lot of work, for a lot of social media pushing, a lot of free handouts, a lot of turning up to events, a lot of fixtures. We've really pushed our like Head of the River live streams with Schools Head, Women's Head, and Men's Head. Again, it's just like that brand name awareness, so that when someone's like, oh yeah, where do I go for race photos on this day? We're the ones they think about.
I think it's so easy as well for people to forget like all that work that has to go into all that time and effort and events and giving stuff away for free. And it's not necessarily anyone's fault, because that isn't a sort of posted front, but like when someone says like, oh, this much for a photo, you're like, dude, like so much has gone in to be able to bring you this.
Yeah, sadly, when it's like, I'm trying to think of a really good example. So you look at, we went to Bedford Amateur Regatta, and we're selling photos from there, and the photographer's getting paid for his stuff, and the rest of that money from AllMarkOne is actually paying for GB April trials that happened like the week earlier that we've got to fund somehow. And then that's also funding the random shoot we did for the boat races that we also cover as like a social media side, because it does great on socials. And stuff like that, and like boat race fixtures or the lightweight boat races and all those type of things. Like, those don't just happen, but we need to we can only get away with doing all of that stuff because we are the bigger company. And that's kind of the stage that we're at now. Like at the start of the business, it was all like, right, how can we undercut this person? How can we do this thing a little bit faster, quicker than anyone else? We'd take photos and everyone else would be like, yeah, I'll edit them tomorrow and they'll be up tomorrow afternoon. We'd be like, cool, you up to 3 a.m? I'm up to 3 a.m. They'll be up by 3 a.m. Done. So at 8 o'clock the next morning, when everyone woke up, photos are up. Now you listen to that and you're like, flipping out, it's a very long time to wait for photos, because then we were like, well, okay, everyone else has kind of caught on. So why don't we edit them and upload them between the gaps in the races? So you see a race go past, we'll edit all the photos, upload them all, and then the next race goes past and we'll keep doing it. And then that's now caught on. And we're like, okay, right, that's the next stage. And now we've got to get to the point where it's no longer how hard we can work, because as the business grows, there's got to be a point where the staff that come in and get paid as a job, like you two might see this, but like if a rowing club calls you up at 9 p.m, you two are probably going to hop out of bed to go and service a rowing machine if you need one for the next day. If you hired someone, they're probably not going to do that.
Yeah.
So we're in that same position now where it's like, yeah, if we need to get photos up that evening, we've got to, like, I will stay up until 4 o'clock in the morning to get them online. Another member of staff that doesn't have the same interest in AllMarkOne that I do, or some of the other people in the company do, we've got to come up with another bit. So we can no longer work harder than everyone else. We've got to work smarter or better, or it's like, I'll go off on like a bit of a weird tangent here. We're in this like castle of AllMarkOne doing what we do, and then everyone's kind of like, they've got their bow and arrows and they're trying to like shoot us down with something. And either we just work even harder and we build our castle taller and taller, or we just try and build multiple moats outside of AllMarkOne. So that's being able to go to GB trials for free because we can recoup that money in from somewhere else, or being able to go to the under 23 world championships because we've got commercial partners that can help us out get there. And those are all moats that kind of stop or mean that AllMarkOne can continue doing what we do at the moment without that like risk of someone outworking us.
Yeah.
Because we can only work so hard.
Well, that's awesome to hear. I mean, firstly, awesome to hear how you sort of innovated out of COVID, which was like another thing that we really had to do, because at that time, almost everything for our business was servicing machines at clubs, universities, and that all stopped completely. So like, yeah, it's cool to see it's sink or swim time, and you kind of have to innovate. And without devaluing out on how much work you've done, I'm sure you probably don't even realize that like the kind of things you've done, the innovation of your sport, like pushing those levels again comes down to like, it's rowing, like, how do we make the boat go faster? How do we make this go better? And like Pete and I all sort of found ourselves sometimes just almost for the fun of it, you know, on a day, like how much could we get done today? Like how late could we stay? Like, you know, we'll turn up somewhere. I remember we went up to a gym in Sheffield, and it was going to be a 2-day job. And then sort of mid-afternoon, Pete was like, oh, what time does the gym close? And they're like, oh, we're open till like 10:30. And then we're like, right, let's do it. Like, let's work till 10:30.
Tom, you go and get a food. I'm just gonna crack on. Like, just bring the Mackies back and we'll finish it off. Yeah. There's just so much that goes into. There's just so much that goes into running a business that people just don't see from the outside unless you're like in it and doing it. Like at the start of April, we went and did an Edinburgh trip. We had to like fix some machines up in Edinburgh, North Berwick. We stopped over in Newcastle at a CrossFit gym, and on the way back we had like some skis and bikes to fix in the Teesside. And obviously we said that we wanted to do one podcast episode a week at the very least. And it was like our second week. So, well, obviously on the second week, we're not going to like miss out and do it. So we finish off a long day. We had to start off in North Berwick, then drive to Edinburgh, do 3 different locations with all the machines. Right. We get to hotel room. We need to record.
It's like 9:30. We're knackered.
We finished recording. So I was like, mate, I need to like go to bed. Like, we've got a big day tomorrow. And I said, okay, well, I know I can basically fix ergs with my eyes closed. So what did I do? I just stayed up all night, editing the episode, pushing it out. And actually the next day, we've already like got some good responses from people for that. So like that effort feels worth it, but you still have to kind of like make that first investment and keep pushing, keep innovating. And I really like what you said about not just trying to imitate somebody else and just sort of like doing what you thought was cool at the time. I heard something really good, which is if you're in your own lane, there's no traffic. So that's why you can't copy and imitate other people. You just got to do what you think is good, and that's going to accelerate your brand so that other people will try and copy and imitate you.
If your initial plan is always to like copy what someone else is doing, you're always going to be one step behind.
Exactly.
Every single time.
Yeah, I've heard that one as well. Yeah, definitely.
But it is literally like that like rowing or like high performance mentality of like, oh yeah, so like you're sat on the bank and at schools and everyone's taking photos from the grass bank, and you look at the start pontoon and you're like, why not? Can we just take photos from down there instead? You're like, no one's saying no. Like, what are the rules? You got to wear a life jacket. You can't get in the way. Can't say anything. Photographers are sat on their own, so they're not going to say anything. I can get them some life jackets, and they're not going to get in the way. Perfect. So we'll get that. And it's the same type of thing in rowing, where you're like, those washers on the boat. Do we need them for the final? Nope. Okay. Well, they're not on the boat for the final because we can save ourselves like 100 grams there or whatever. Like all that type of stuff of. Just trying to find like that tiny 0.01% could just make a little bit more difference of just like, and then it gets to like, okay, everyone's now on the start pontoons. What happens if we put the camera on the water rather than on the start pontoon? Oh, the photos look like 1% better. Sweet. Maybe we'll sell 1% more photos. That works great.
It's a common theme we've had come up, with we speak to some athletes of high level, and it's the common theme, the thing that they look back on and wish they'd maybe started earlier is work smarter, not harder, and there's only so hard you can work on the same limit. And then it just becomes this game almost. And like the more, like for Pete and I, like every time, for me especially, like if there's anything difficult I have to do, like if I can turn it into a competition with myself, like all of a sudden, like, let's go. Like just you obviously like, yeah.
We find it as well. Like AllMarkOne was always those like meddling kids that were kind of like screwing up the whole system at the time. Where we are pretty much the system now, so it's a very different thing. But like for Henley, for example, Henley qualifiers, I'll probably get back to in a second. But Henley women's, for Henley Royal, there's a rule that you're not allowed to get in the river. Because like you can disrupt racing. It's not a rule for any women's. So we were like, cool, so if we can get the camera on the boom, does that look even better? And everyone's like, yeah, the photos look a lot better if we can do that. So the photographers will spend 6 hours stood in the river because the photos look 5% better than if you're being sat on the bank. It's the same at Henley qualifiers, the sun sets behind Henley town. So if you're shooting from the bank, you get the sun in the background of all your photos. And we're like, is there any rule that says we can't just like moor up a boat on the other side of the booms? No rule against that. So now all of our qualifier photos are taken on the other side of the course.
So you've got to say at that time in the summer, it comes down in the middle.
Comes down right in the middle, right in front of where you want all your photos to be. So we go on the other side of the course and we get all of our photos from the other direction, which is what you get at Henley Royal during the normal racing, because that's where the photographer stand is. And someone's thought about that 50 years ago and was like, I want to be over there somewhere. And we were like, well, we'll just do the same thing for qualifiers. And then it's a case of like networking and being like, right, who do we know that means that we can get on a boat out there without having to like give them cash, because AllMarkOne never really had the cash. It was like, well, what else can we offer? Can we offer to do photo sessions with them? Can we go make them a video? Can we do X and Y and all those type of things? It's like, right, it's just about like who you know and understanding that connection and being like, right, we'll start a good relationship here. That means that now it gets to every Henley qualifiers, and we know that us and Henley Rowing Club can work together to take like the coolest photos for every qualifiers crew.
I also think it just makes the job so much more fun. Like I just can't like understand why someone would do a job and not try and push the boundaries. I think that just makes it so much more rewarding. And sometimes you get things wrong, but that's innovating. Sometimes you might get in a position like that photo was crap. No, okay, scratch that.
We've done this far too many times. So yeah, I've been in that position a lot.
I like just pushing yourself to the top. And like once you've pretty much exhausted all the options and then you're doing the best that you can possibly do, it just becomes a game of like 1%. So we were servicing ergs, like I think in March at London Rowing Club, and we bumped into Phil Clapp, who's obviously at the time was just in between having done like a really good score on I think a 1 minute test or a 500, something like that. And then he just had to race a guy who just broke that record just a few days before the competition. And it was the time whether he was either going to like get it back or not. And we just remember speaking to him about like the different things that you can do to an ergo just to make it 1% better and just get that extra little bit of everything that you can get. Because also if people can see that you are putting the effort in, like subconsciously that's going to be that recognized, and it's going to like cement you. Because if you're constantly doing the best that you can do, well, who's going to beat you? Especially if like right now you said you are the system and like you're the big fish in the league.
Yeah, and it's one of those things to keep in mind, and it's great that everyone in the team has the same kind of mentality.
Yeah,
because it's really easy once you become the people who are like the ones to beat. It's very easy to just like chill out a bit and be like, well, no one's going to try and beat us for a while. Road photography is not a big enough niche for enough people to want to give it a go. And it would be very easy for us to kind of like step back and be like, cool, right, well, we can chill out for a bit now. But actually that doesn't help AllMarkOne grow, doesn't help the community do any better. And it probably means that I find it less fun because I've got to have that like constant step forward every single time. It's quite easy to sit back and be like, cool, we did the summer season, and October in the UK, pretty quiet. So we'll go to this holiday destination and chill out for 2 weeks. Or we could go to Boston ahead of the trials and spend a ridiculous amount of money and hope that it pays off. And I remember getting on the aeroplane on the way back, about $7,000 in the hole, because we're just taking such a huge risk of like going all the way there, spending on hotels, food, staff, rented equipment. I had a $25,000 lens in my backpack, walking around Boston, those type of things. And it was just that like, have I taken it a bit too far here? But then it's like, okay, now that the US teams start like understanding who we are a bit more, and the money starts rolling in the week after, and then the commercial partners start paying up the invoices, and we're like, actually, it kind of works out. But unless you take that like big old risk, you're never really going to do it. Like I think we did 6,000% up this October compared to last October.
No,
because of
it's risk, but it's calculated risk, obviously. But I always keep finding myself coming back to like the phrases that we used in rowing, like in terms of like talking about like, oh, we could just take our foot off the gas, and we should say, but staying in one place is like standing still is going backwards. Unless you're not innovating, you're automatically going backwards. And also like we were talking with Ben Lewis, the kind of the military aspect. He's talked through a story about how some of the rowers that he was coaching at Leander went to the SES and had a bit of an experience there. And they were talking about this guy Floyd was like, you're not trying to do one thing 100% better, you're trying to do 100 things 1% better. You'll never be able to make like a monumental shift in one area, but if you're trying to improve all these parts at the time, and again, like it's funny for me to have thought that these phrases and sayings and these little quirky little things we say in sport, it's just about sport, and it's not. Like sport's just a part of life, and if you apply that in other areas, like you can be just as successful, I think.
Yeah, or even just like questioning what you're doing, whether it's going to work or not, just helps you kind of like understand the way that it's got to go. Like we started off the wristband program, which was we were just like, oh yeah, we'll hand them out because it gets our name out there. And then we started doing a bit more. And now we don't really need to do it for our name to get out there. And then it's just that question of like, does it make the boat go faster? But it's the same type of thing. It's just like, right, now what thing does it actually give to AllMarkOne? And you're like, right, it gives us like continued brand image. It gives us like something cool that people come up to us and want to try and ask us about or something. It gives us business opportunities for work for future ones. We've now done our first collaboration wristband with Unbreakable Female Athlete and JC over there. And it's like, now it's become more than just like, oh yeah, we want people to buy our photos. And now it's just like a super big thing of like, right, it's a legitimate part of the business process of AllMarkOne every single year.
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely amazing and really great to like see that kind of also energy being pushed out into the rowing world. So for example, after I finished my career, I stepped away for it for a few years, and I tried engineering, and then I just couldn't also like stop thinking about how I could integrate that back into rowing, because from the outside, it sometimes can feel a bit stale, especially when it comes to innovation, especially like for the technology aspect of what rowing looks like. So I think it's really amazing to like see Fireblad appear in rowing, and obviously like other people like cementing their will to improve rowing up to the highest standard possible.
Yeah, you tend to accidentally find everyone else that kind of feels the exact same way. Like we can be sat at Met Regatta and I'll go from speaking at a tent with you guys and like 2 minutes later I'm like sat chatting to someone about how we can integrate like live timing into Fours Head live streams and stuff, and you're like, okay, well that's a good one. Then we go like 2 more meters down and then we're talking to someone about a new footplate that's coming out for a boat and we need a video for it, and then we go in 2 meters down and it's the same thing every single time. It's like, actually there's probably 150 people that have walked past in that process, but the people that are like into it and want to try and make something a little bit better tend to automatically find themselves and each other.
Because you'll be the first ones there, the last ones left, the guys packed.
We were the last ones out of Nat schools this year by a long way.
Oh yeah,
long way.
we stayed to about last races. Yeah, but not much after that.
I think most people do, and then we get to the very end and we're like, cool. Now we hand out all the medalist t-shirts or the medalist wristbands, because I screwed up the t-shirts this year, but we'll sort about that. And then the photos have to go up. Then we've got to do an Instagram post that's got to do well, because it's Nat School's Sunday. Like that's a big day for social media posting, so that's got to go well. And then we've got to make sure that everyone's got the right amount of gear and all the rented equipment has to come back, because that goes back off to the rental house. And you're like, okay, racing finished 2.5 hours ago and we are still sat at the finish line in our cars sorting social media posts and video editing, and we have to split all the video footage between everyone so everyone could edit something if something happened and all that type of stuff. And it's like, okay, it's a pretty big operation now. It's no longer someone takes some photos, here's my camera, I'm going to go home, you'll see the photos tomorrow, see you later, I've got to catch the train with everyone else.
Yeah.
So now they're like, right, the photos are done so that everyone else on the minibus on the way home, refreshing the website, sees their images in the next 4 minutes.
Yeah. That's awesome. Talking of big things as well, I like to mention obviously the big old picture up in Leicester Square.
That was pretty cool. I'm sure lots of like media people probably dream about stuff like that. I never really have, because I'm more of like the business side than the media side. I can do the media side, but I'm a business owner. That's kind of where I come from. But that was pretty cool when I first got the first email, and I was like, okay, right, this would be quite cool, but we'll see. And then I got an email being like, okay, it's going to be on this day. I'm like, okay, not really sure if it will be, but sure, like that's a Coca-Cola advert they'd be replacing, so it probably won't.
Yeah.
And then on the day, got another confirmation email. I was like, okay, I still haven't told
believe it
at all. Literally, it was like me, and then my mum and my sister were in London already. And I was like, okay, well, you can turn up if you want, but I'm not getting your hopes up. Like, I haven't seen the video. It might be really short. It might be on a collage of like 150 other clips. And then, like 11 o'clock on a Monday rolls around, and we just had this like massive, trying to think, where it's probably like 45 meter wide video of Kyra doing GB trials. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm sure a lot of people would pay a lot of money to be on that wall.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, Marco. And do you let yourself enjoy some of these moments? Are you still sort of wrapped up in it? And we sort of talk to people again, like another sort of common theme maybe when they look back is that they say they wish they'd sort of maybe turn around a little bit more and been happy with where they'd come from and not chase that next step.
This is the thing, like standard competitive mindset. Like I'm just not happy, and that's the really difficult part, is to be like, like my friends get annoyed at me quite a lot about it. because I'm like striving for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And they're like, have you thought about like what you just did? Like we went to Nat schools and we had like the first time we've had like a proper sales stand, and we came away from it and I was like, I probably would have changed like the Saturday finish line photos. And they're like, dude, like we had 10 members of staff and we had like the whole stand and we met so many people and so many coaches came up and said hi, and we met friends and families and all that type of stuff. And I'm leaving being like, it's one thing we did yesterday afternoon, probably could have done a little bit better. And we have to have like meetings about that type of stuff.
I can see Pete smiling.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is kind of how I feel on the inside about like every single time we do like a podcast or a video or even like anything to do with Rowgear, just
The tank.
getting those pixels, just this needs to be like 3% shifted to the left. This isn't quite centered. This looks awful. And to the unsuspecting eye, nobody else can kind of like spot those differences. But unless you are striving to be pushing yourself to that kind of level, you're going to be falling off your game.
Yeah, but it's what we have to do. It's like we look at. I was on a phone call. This is like classic me working. I was on a phone call discussing a photo book with a client at 9:30 p.m. on Thursday. Like they were just like, yeah, I'm free at 9:30. I was like, I'll be free at 9:30. I was chatting to them and they were like, yeah, so this photo is really cool, but I don't know why. I'm like, because that one was taken with a 20 grand lens. That one was taken with a 1 grand lens. And he was like, I can't tell the difference. I just know it's cooler. And I'm like, yeah, we can tell the difference. You don't have to tell the difference. You just have to know it's a bit better.
Yeah.
Because if you line them all up at Henley Royal, we all sit in the exact same spot. We all take the exact same photos. Our photos have to be that like one that stands out. Doesn't have to be for a specific reason. Maybe it's because we captured the image when all the blades look like they're in perfectly in time, which we notice when we do boat race stuff. All the non-rowing photographers, they really look for stuff like that because they're like, I don't know what I'm looking for. I've got a photo of a boat and there's 8 blades. You can see it's Cambridge. And you're like, yeah, but one of them's square, one of them's feathered, one of them's just hit a wave. Like that doesn't look like a cool photo. It just looks like a photo of a Cambridge boat in some massive wave. So like when you then look at Henley images and you're like, right, that one's got a slightly blurrier background. The lighting looks a little bit better. The quality's a little bit sharper. And that's why like when we sit there and we take a photo with, like a 20 grand lens or a 5 grand camera, and we've got cards that work a little bit quicker and we got more batteries, that means we don't miss as many races and all those type of things. And it's like, only us notice that. Most of the time you'll find some like mum or dad that's a big photography geek and they're like, I've noticed you've got this, and we're like, cool. But most other people are just like, it's just a cool photo, isn't it? Like, and you're like, yeah, it's just a cool photo.
Yeah, like we'll be coming back Friday of Nat schools and like should we move this like that bit out? Like should we like maybe the sliders were in the wrong place? And like it doesn't matter to anyone else, but like that's kind of what makes the job fun, and like that's what makes innovation fun. And like again, like with servicing, I've been doing it. Like Pete's been doing it a good few years now, but I've been doing it 14 years or whatever.
I've been doing it 8, yeah.
And we'll get to a job and like maybe I've explained one way to Pete, and he'll be like, why do we do it this way? And then I was thinking in my head, and I'll be like, because over the last 14 years, I've tried about 12 methods, and this one's maybe like 10, 15 seconds quicker per machine. But if you're doing 20 machines a day on every job and blah, 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 and like all this innovation, like takes a lot of time to come. And then you find yourself in a place, like you said, where you can do something in a way that other people can't.
And that includes customer service as well, because like what other company is going to build a great relationship with their clients and customers unless they're able to make themselves available at 9:30 p.m.
Or when some parent is like, honestly, it's my J14 kid's first race. I know he goes to this school. I know he was in a boat with 4 other lads.
Yeah.
And they had 2 blades. And I was like, Ace, I can find you the photos. That's totally fine. Or like a dad walks in and goes, I've got 2 daughters. One of them's in one boat, one of them's in the other. Don't know which, like, I don't know the boat numbers. I don't really know them all, but can you find me the photos? Well, like, yeah. What club are they at? Don't know. What color are the blades? Oh, perfect. It's this one. And you're like, right, okay, there's a little bit there that's like, most people know exactly what they're looking for and they go and find it. There's like the one or two few people per event they're like, oh yeah, can you help me with this one? And we're like, thank God we've got a little bit of knowledge of that happened and that happened, or we're looking for race 65 but it wasn't there, and you're like, yeah, well, when we were sat there we heard that race 65 was postponed and it got pushed to this time, so it's in this folder, I'll move it back over, or something like that.
I think that's also cool because we kind of live in a world where, like, you know, if the computer says no, you know, we can't do it. Like, no, you know, it's not on the list. It's not what I do. So, like, yeah, it's also quite rewarding to have someone turn around. Like, we went to a gym the other day. We did all their ergs bikes and stuff, and he's like, I've got all these assault bikes, and I was like, well, I've never fixed these, but I fixed the ones over at like GB ones down in Hammersmith. So I'll probably take a look at them. And then, like, by the time we left, he was like, right, I want you in. Like, we're going to do these, and like, have you ever fixed like a barbell? I was like, yeah, I've taken them apart a few times. I know what to do. It's like, right, come back and get them done. And it's like, it's awesome to kind of just, then you build a relationship and trust with your customers. And like you said, and then they come back again and again and again.
They know that you're not going to sit there and be like, yeah, you need to service your Oreos once every 3 months. And they're like, do we not? Like, trying to get money out of it. Yeah. It's the same type of thing with us. And we're like, cool, yeah, you should buy some prints for your gym. And they're like, cool, well, this big photo here is 150 quid. And we're like, yeah, but you're going to put it in a gym. So, like, you probably don't need that super glossy, super high quality photo.
Yeah.
We do these ones for 40 quid.
Yeah.
Because every year you're going to want to replace the whole set with the next year's lot.
Exactly.
They're like, oh yeah, probably could have fleeced me for like 600 quid there, but instead we're going to go 200 and something for everything. Because we, like, hopefully we then get to the point where every year we can go and replace all of the photos for them, or we can add more to it and they can just have like a bigger wall. We've got it at Brookes and Everett, and like quite a lot of clubs are starting to get at it now. We're doing the next set for Latimer, and it's just like really cool banners that no one else can offer. But we're like, oh yeah, so this one molds when there's loads of moisture in the air. Well, that construction banner holding up that fence doesn't mold, and that's outside. So why don't we just print photos onto that material instead, which is now what we do.
Yeah, definitely. It's awesome. And like, yeah, being able to like do what's best for your clients is really good. And like, okay, you haven't got that much money this year, so let's just fix what's broken and we'll come back next year. And like, yeah, like being a human. And we have like so many clubs, you know, where now, I'll just say, you know, can I come Friday? And they're like, yeah, no one's at the club. Here's the main gate code. Here's the door code. Send me the invoice when you're done. And like, that feels nice to be trusted in that way. And then obviously you want to like respect that reputation.
But then there's also times where you get a phone call at like 9-10 p.m. from somebody up in St Andrews, not to name call you Al Sinclair, but he's got a problem with his dynamic. And then I just see Tom just drop what he's doing and just like spends the next half an hour on the phone telling him how to fix like a faulty part.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was my work and my, you know, reputation. That was something that a few months before we'd gone up and fixed, and whether it was a faulty part, I think probably a faulty part or not, but, you know, something had gone wrong. So, you know, it's like, it's, you know, it can take, like the phrase, when it take a lifetime to build a reputation and a second to destroy it. So once you've got it, it's something worth maintaining. And I've noticed now, having been, like I said, I've been doing this since sort of 2009. So having been in this industry a long time, like that slow organic growth and like real, like, working on like connections and like doing the best job you can, saving people money when you can, leads to like long-term success. Whereas, like you said, grabbing 150 quid off someone the first time because you just happen to not mention that you have a better option,
a cheaper option that's better for them,
they're not going to come back.
Yeah, and we have that quite a lot. So like, yeah, as I say, we came away from that schools and I wasn't very happy, and nor was Rory, the other guy that was with me. With the Saturday finish line images, we just hadn't shot them. The settings were slightly off, and they just didn't look very AllMarkOne. And then we kind of like sat on it for about a week, and we were like, cool, they're not going to be sold. They can just go out for free, because there is no way that we're sitting there being like, this image of you winning your red box at Henley Royal or you winning your gold medal at Nat Schools is worth the same as this slightly blurry photo that we took on a dark Saturday evening. Whether it was Nat Schools or not, the fact that it looks poor means that it's no longer the same value, and it risks devalue, rather than like being like, oh, that means that these images are really good value. What it probably does is devalue everything, because they're like, well, if that one's worth that, this one could look the exact same way and we'd have to pay it. No.
I like the phrase is the standard you walk past is the standard you accept. And it's up to you to maintain that standard. And we were fixing some rogues in the gym today, and we're doing on our final pass, and we just noticed like a couple where just there was something, and it's frustrating because you're like, I'm pretty sure like no one else on earth is going to notice this. It's only because I sit on 5,000 machines a year.
No one's going to notice that the seat is slightly off to the left.
But I know. And if I'm going to maintain that standard, I have to maintain that standard. So as hot as we are and we've got stuff and I want to get out there, it's like, right, I'm going back to the van and I'm getting that part and we're here for an extra half hour. And like can quite often seem like extra work for nothing. But I think as you found that with your company and like with what we're doing, like over time that accumulates and you become the person who if you're going to go and get a photo, from AllMarkOne, like it's going to be on.
All that compound interest like really starts to add up. So like having obviously been running AllMarkOne for 8 years now, where do you see the company growing? Which direction do you see it going in, and what would you like to see / innovate, or are there any other projects / ventures that you'd like to explore?
Yeah, I looked at other sports quite a lot. There's not really many sports that are super similar, but I get very jealous of like Sky Sports F1 or GCN in cycling and all those type of things, like big companies that evolve the sport that they're in. And we're kind of slowly getting to the point now. We were talking about it off camera, but it was that bit of, okay, right, we're applying for Henley passes and we're applying for double the amount of the next biggest team. And we're like, okay, so how on earth do we work that through in the future? And it's the same thing as what Sky Sports had to deal with. And it's like, okay, yeah, so every other broadcaster is bringing one presenter, and Sky Sports F1 wants to bring 6 presenters. And you're like, okay, so we need our own space and we need like this plan and this plan and this plan so that we can continue doing it without affecting everyone else. And we're slowly getting to the same part where, so we're at Nat schools, we need like our own area because we're a big enough team. And I think we're going to get there soon with the likes of Henley as well, where it's like, okay, we're working with so many people that actually we need to have a AllMarkOne base here where possible. And whether that means that we're going to have to invest pretty heavily, or whether we're just going to have to do a little bit more like personal relationships and networking and trying to understand what we can offer back to make that relationship work. Like, we'll see. But that's kind of that route. I'd love to try and get our physical presence really big at those type of events, but that involves that event helping us out a little bit. The other one is like the online presence, a bit like GCN, where it's like the bit I really like is the access pass that they do at the moment. It's like you pay a monthly fee, but you get access to all the cycling races as like live streams. They're not produced by GCN, but GCN provide them. And it's that type of thing where it's like actually AllMarkOne are in the position where we could probably help events grow their streams. And then it means that you're not having to pay cash to watch one event. You can kind of just pay like a consistent fee.
I think that's really interesting because I think for a long time people, the constant argument as to why there isn't a bit more money in the sport, why there isn't a bit more funding or availability, it's like, oh, it's just not a spectator sport. It's not a spectator sport. You can't watch the whole thing. And then, we're again talking about this with Ben Lewis, like you can't watch a cycling race. Look how big cycling is. Like,
yeah, and you've just got to explain it. Like if you looked at a video of a group of 3 cycling and a group of 20 cycling and a group of 5 cycling, and you didn't really have an explanation of what was going on, they could be in any order whatsoever. So you got to make sure that there's like really clear graphics and good like commentators and all those type of things that like add that whole part to it. Like if you just play a rowing race, it's not that exciting watching just like 6 boats go down a course. The exciting bit is like understanding why they're doing what they're doing and being able to tap into like what the crews are up to, and whether that's a big event that have got to take that jump and be like, if you want to race here, you have got to do X, Y, and Z for us, for our live stream or for our coverage or whatever. That's where it's going to come from, whether it's Head of the River or whether it's Henley Royal. If Henley Royal came out and said, we're going to put live telemetry on every single boat that makes it to finals day, what are you going to do? Make it to finals day and then decide that you don't want to race in the end? Like, if you've made it to finals day, you have to do X, Y, and Z. And if that involves putting live telemetry on all of the gates and then putting it on a live stream. Or you're putting live GPS trackers or all of those type of things, or having like big trees that allow people to start like guessing where people are going to get to. Like Henley Royal has a great live stream, but once you've watched that race, you're like, cool, I've now got to look at the AllMarkOne big Google sheet to work out what that's actually done to racing for the next bit.
Yeah.
And that's something that someone on a live stream could definitely do, is like cut back to a studio and talk about that type of stuff.
I think technology's moved on as well, so that it is more accessible. Again, we were talking, the reason why Henley didn't do filming before the drones were possible was that Dorney in 2012 paid £1 million to get the camera rig on the wire.
Yeah,
that cost £1 million. So it's just like not a price to come in. And then I think I heard, don't know the numbers, but the alternative was he was one of the first people in the UK who had a camera that he had like the license and the ability or the size to fly over people and all that.
Yeah.
And he was like 10 grand a day. It's like 10 grand a day is expensive, but it's not $1 million. So like that's a huge difference in that how like that's coming down. Because I think that's really interesting. And again, like talking about the commentators, like that's the skill of having people in place who can understand sports. So like there are some sports, like you say, for say cycling, Tour de France, like having someone who can explain to a layman without also like being useless for the people who know what they're talking about. I might not, for me, football's not the best thing, and sometimes the match will be boring, but like if I sat there with Pete and Pete will explain, I'll be like, there's nothing going on, and he's like, no, they're testing, they're like, this is a game of chess that's going on, and sort of explain it, and you can actually start to understand. The same goes for rowing. On the face of it, it's just people going mental.
Yeah, if you've got a commentator that's not massively in the know, and you watch a crew do like a big old push, and then you're like, oh well, they've died, and the other crew's coming back, and you're like, no, they've probably finished their push and they're waiting to do the next one. Like it's stuff like that, and it's like, okay, you just need someone knowledgeable to commentate on what you're looking at, and we try and get that at all of our Head of the River live streams, and I think that's like we do it with 1 or 2 cameras, a bit like we're doing here.
Yeah,
like our Head of the River live streams are this level of like polish of like, we don't have wireless cameras up and down the course. We have wired cameras on like random points at Imperial College Boathouse that we can get to with an Ethernet cable. But then we just try and add to it with like the commentary, or we try and get like some decent results up, and we push our photos and those type of things.
The content's more important. You can spend as much as you want on providing it, but like if it's not there,
if you just watch the boat go past, you might as well have just been like filmed by your mum and dad from the bridge. Like the whole point is that it's got to have a little bit of extra with it somewhere. I think that's really important.
Awesome.
So good. Yeah. So apart from doing live streams and hopefully being the official media partner for Henley Royal in the next few years.
Maybe one day. I think we're probably still a long way off that conversation. But yeah, hopefully at some point that'd be really good.
Well, if you guys keep improving like you do,
improving, I'd love to be. I think that would be something that would be really special. It's like that official status that we have with some events allows us to shoot a little bit more, and it allows us to take slightly bigger risks at those events. We saw that in Nat Schools. Last year we weren't official and we brought 6 people along. So we were official and we can afford to bring 10 people along because that like level of risk is decreased. And that's kind of something that we're working on now, is that like relationship with specific events, and being like, right, okay, we can, if you can give us this one title that you're not paying for and doesn't really have any value to you, it adds so much value to us, so we can probably try and make something work.
Well, hopefully with like constant innovation and striving to like be the best with like every event, it's going to happen. So
hopefully so.
Are there any other things that you'd like rowing to potentially adapt that you might have like taken from other areas of business or other sports?
Yeah, I guess like we kind of mentioned it off camera as well, but it was like that sponsorship side of sailing is really easy to try and get in on, and rowing really should be starting to do that type of stuff too. And I think sometimes there's a chance that rowing kind of undersells itself quite a lot when it comes to that type of thing. And either you go for slightly too small of a company, or you go for a slightly bigger company, but at the wrong price point. You kind of underprice yourself so much that you come in as not very important. And it's one of those things of like, you can, like Sail GP has only a few tens of thousand followers more than World Rowing. So it's not that much bigger in terms of like social media reach. But you can sit there and as a Sail GP team get millions and millions and millions of pounds coming in from sponsors. And you're like, okay, why aren't any rowing teams doing that? Why are the top funded rowing teams either membership clubs or universities or large private schools? Like, there has to be a way for like external investment to come into rowing, and then as we talk about, then it starts the loop and it doesn't leave the rowing community. It just keeps that whole like thing growing. So whether that's like a big university team or a big club team deciding to commit to a really big sponsorship deal and kind of throwing everything out that everyone knows at the moment. At the moment, it's kind of like, oh yeah, you could get your logo on the kit. You can get some logos on the boat. And you could like come to Henley. And you're like, cool, that ticks like 5 of the boxes. Why don't you have a dedicated press team and you go and do these international events and you go and do these social media things and you have these type of posts and all those type of things? And you're like, actually, you build it into a big portfolio, you could probably offer something that quite a lot of other sports can't. With the like international racing scene, you could go and race Head of the Charles in October, and then you could go and race the King's Cup or whatever in Australia, and you come back and you race San Diego. You can go race Ghent and Duisburg and Holland Becker, and then all of those type of ones. You can like jump between them and be like, actually, we're not an international team. We're just a team. They're really pretty good. And that could be, that spot is open for anyone at this point because no one's done it.
Yeah. I think there's exciting things to come. Again, having got, I mean, we speak to so many people around the country with rowing anyway, but again, like speaking to people like you and some other people down at Marlow Nat schools and stuff, there's some cool ideas, right? There's some fresh ideas coming into it. There's some people who want to shake things up a bit, and I think it's really exciting to kind of try and get on the forefront of that and get involved in that and like you said, like innovate the sport.
Yeah, if any club wants to consult me, just send me an email, send you my fees.
Just put it out there now.
Sponsorship consultant.
Nice. I also really like the fact that rowing's become like really big in CrossFit in the last few years, especially with like the mass adoption of like the Concept 2 products, like the bikes and the skis and the Rowgears are becoming like more prevalent. And I think we're definitely going to like see a lot of people become more interested in rowing through that sort of side of the sport. So, and
even on a basic term, it means that Concept 2 have a little bit more money to invest in their blade research, because they probably make all of their money from their gym equipment, and they can take some of that money and then put it into their blade research and development.
Yeah,
this type of thing. So you can make shafts a little bit thinner, and you can make the spoon shape a little better, or you can just like help on when inflation goes up, blades don't go up in price, those type of things. And it means that like money coming in from elsewhere is, again, it just like keeps that circle of money within the rowing community coming in from external investment.
Absolutely. This is what I was basically trying to say, is that I wouldn't want to see rowing in the CrossFit world sort of like develop alongside of like separately from like the rowing that you traditionally like have at clubs with river racing and 6-lane racing and all that sort of thing. So it'll be interesting to see like how that transition starts how that relationship like starts to develop in the next few years. Definitely.
Yeah, and I think what's also interesting is seeing that happening, like seeing this innovation coming up and people talking about it, and combine that with what a lot of other people are doing, which is like improving accessibility to rowing. So like again, like at one of the regattas we bumped into Buckingham, who's working with Love Rowing, which is like GB Rowing's kind of charitable arm, and they're working at like, and there's a lot of other people who've got involved with them already, schools who've like donated equipment and things like that. I think it was Radley's donated some ergos. They've gone to a school that couldn't afford them. I've heard other plans of people sort of doing races with old shells and then donating them afterwards. And like, if you can make it more accessible, again with Rowgear, like some of the equipment and stuff that we're trying to put out there is try and make it like more affordable and accessible to other people. It's in a tiny part compared to what other companies are doing, but those two things together is like can really take off. Like all of a sudden you've got a sport which the people in it like absolutely love it. Like you don't get a rower who's just like, I do it for a laugh. Like it's you are in or out.
I don't
you might think like with a sport with the people in it are that invested in it. If you can innovate in a way that, you know, like I said, brings more money in, and then also like make it more accessible, like that could accelerate the sport to a huge point. And then like other sort of things, you know, like home country's doing like the 500-meter sprint stuff now, which is interesting. Sort of know from Germany, run a little 500-meter sprint Bundesliga. It's quite popular. It's more of a social calendar event. Like seen it being trialed at home countries. Commonwealth Regatta as well did it in 2014 when I was there. Or like mixed eight event that we did. Like rowing, there is a place for like very serious, very high level rowing, but I also think there's like a gap to like have more fun with it, enjoy it, have it side by
the
side.
same like intensity of people without the same intensity of the performance.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I think there's some really exciting things to come, and yeah, I mean, let's watch this space.
Yeah, I think stuff like that is hopefully going to kick off at some point. It requires like a lot of effort from both event organisers, but also from the national governing body of just like being able to fit those events into the calendar somewhere that makes it work. Post Henley is a very like weird time because you get so many athletes that disappear off. But maybe there's some gaps in that bit for a slightly more exciting event. But then maybe there's some gaps before Henley that allows for slightly more serious events, but with a slightly different layout, but are still taken just as seriously as some of the big events at the moment.
You see that in junior rowing as well. After Henley, when you go and do the British Junior Rowing Champs, most of the crews that have been like very successful at Henley from schools, etc., they will have either like gone to the GB team for either Cooper Worlds, but no one's really turning up for the British Junior Rowing Champs. Like that's basically the Nat school. So
yeah, I think that's an event that is able to be run because of all the clubs that go and support it. But if you did a senior champs around the same time, you'd lose. You'd end up with the same type of clubs, and then you would miss out on all the universities and all of the GB lot, which means that as a senior championships, it's a little bit harder. So it's it's very much that thing of like, you could put it after Nat schools and after Henley and all that type of stuff, and just do it as like a exciting event for some people to turn up to, or you've got to somehow find a bit in the calendar before Nat schools, before Henley, around the like BUCS area where you can have a serious event that's during summer, exciting, but allows you to have the biggest crews there. And you've got to invest the hell out of it, and you've got to be like, right, the winner gets 25 grand, 20 grand prize money to make it worthwhile entering. Maybe that's the way it's got to go. That's kind of how a lot of big events start. Not in rowing, but in lots of other sports where you're like, okay, the first bit, there's going to be this prize money, and for the first 4 years, anyone could come and enter it. And after that, the 5th year, it's 100 quid to enter. And the 6th year, it's 200 quid to enter. And it keeps going up. And then the prize money keeps going up accordingly. And then by the end, you can be like, right, it's 10 grand to enter. But if you win, it's 400 grand of prize money. And you've got crews that'll be like, I'll take that risk. That's a pretty good risk. That's kind of what they do in golf.
Yeah.
They're just like, I will risk the £400,000 entry fee and flights and hotels and cars and everything, because if I win, it's $17 million or something. Like, you've got to make that trade-off work. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, and hopefully, like I said, if like it's a tall order to ask, but like if things like what we're doing, what you're doing, like if we can keep these companies, we can help each other out, we can support each other, we can, like you said, come on this podcast and maybe we can do some stuff with you, whatever. Maybe we can kind of group together and find that money without having to like find that person. Like you said, like you keep it in-house and you keep it with people who love what they're doing, have a passion of what they're doing. Maybe in the future, something like that could happen. Who knows?
Absolutely. Well, we're just at the beginning of the podcast journey, but we very much we're very much hoping to grow it out to like a larger audience, and also like not just limit ourselves to the UK, because there are so many different lessons that you can take from like UK rowing that could be applied in like other countries as well. Because I personally, I come from Poland, and like the rowing culture is very, very different over there.
Yeah, we don't have any. There are very few companies across the world that do what we do in the UK. I think the closest is probably Row2K in America. But apart from that, there's like sports graphics just do photos, but Row2K kind of do like the bigger side of it. There's actually not very many countries in the world that have that like one brand that will go to as many of the events across the year as they can. Plus they do the videos and the social media side, and when we do a Henley draw tree on Google Sheets, whatever, like all the tiny little things that add to like a total rowing brand or a total media organization. That type of thing hasn't really been seen elsewhere yet.
So you're launching AllMarkOne franchise.
Yeah,
AllMarkOne Australia franchise.
So run us for the calendar for this year. What's in store for AllMarkOne, and where can people find you?
So Henley qualifiers is coming up, so we'll be set out on our boat. We might do we've done a few events where we've videoed time trials as well and sold the videos, so we might do that at Henley qualifiers. And then it's Henley Royal, and that is when we've got the entire team there. We'll take all the photos as normal. We sometimes hop on with launches of crews and those type of things, and we can get some really cool photos down the course.
Awesome.
And we do all the boating stuff, but also the video team will be there, and we're working with a lot of people this year, so that'll be really exciting. Then after Henley is where we're kind of in like a bit of a unknown stage at the moment. Some events that I know that we'll do will be GB France. We'll go to GB France because that's based in the UK. And then we're just waiting on British Rowing to choose whether we're able to go to Junior Worlds, Under 23 Worlds, Coop, and Under 23 Europeans. And then Home Internationals fits in around the same as Under 23 Worlds. So it's all kind of one big group there. And then it starts chilling out a little bit. The season will start again in September, but those will be some events here and there. So hopefully, if we can line up, I'd like to go back to America in October and do Head of the Charles again and just try and take it to another level than we did last year.
Wicked, that's awesome. So I guess I've just got a few quick fire round questions that I wanted to ask you.
Try now.
What's your favorite boat type and why?
Boat type is hard. Okay, so like the first one that kind of springs to mind would be the Cox 4. Like both of these are going to be Cox boats, of course, because I am. The first one that springs to mind would just be like a Cox 4 because I've raced the one time I did Henley really, really seriously was in the PA in the Cox 4. I did Junior Worlds in the Cox 4 and Coop in the Cox 4. So there's more of a like good space in my head for that boat than I think most Coxes have. But yeah, I've got the BUCS record in the men's 8, so I think the 8 still takes that. Yeah, that was a 5:31. That was pretty quick.
Wicked. So what's the favorite rowing venue that you've visited or competed at? You can have two answers if you want.
That is a hard one. I'm trying to like go through the ones. So I think I'm gonna try and like split this on off. I think the most underrated venue is actually the Docklands. I did Hopla Regatta this year. I went and photographed there, and I think that venue is just very underused and valued by the UK rowing community. I think it used to be a pretty dodgy place to go and row, not because of anything else, but it was more very much of didn't have start pontoons for quite a while. Didn't have buoys for the first 100 meters of the course for quite a long time, all that type of stuff. And you're like, actually, as a rowing venue, it wasn't very good. But now, like, it's got a full course, great start pontoons, etc. Like that's very undervalued. As for where I've raced, it's difficult when you're talking about favourites. It's going to sound weird, but Nottingham has a mental tailwind on a good day, and that can make racing on it really fun.
Yeah.
As much as the course can be pretty horrendous, and when it's a headwind, it might be my least favourite place in the entire world when you got a 20-mile-an-hour tailwind down Nottingham.
So like once every 6 years.
Yeah. if that.
I'm not sure I've been lucky enough to ever see a nice tailwind.
I know once, and it was pretty good. Every other time, had it twice. Nat Schools got called off one year because the tailwind was too high, and then the other one was BUCS, and that was like spot on speed.
Nice.
That was good.
Nice. There's one other I always ask as well, which I always find quite interesting, is if you could go back to when you first really caught the bug for rowing. If you could time travel back and see that kid, what advice would you give him about rowing or about business?
That's a really hard one. I think it, like, weirdly, as we mentioned earlier, of like me not being very happy with where we are at the moment, it would actually be to go back and just like reassure and be like, actually, the people that you meet are probably going to be the most important part of this. Like, I know that, you know, a third of all athletes that raced at Brookes in my final year won Henley. I think it was probably more than that. I think it was closer to half, and I wasn't one of them. But actually, that doesn't really detract from like the big part of it. Or like went to Junior Worlds and came second in a B final, and everyone else was like in an A final. And you're like, yeah, result was a bit off. It doesn't really detract from like the people that you then met and the connections that you have, and then the relationships that you then build, because those guys and girls will go off to do something pretty special too. And it's the same thing. Like, you can just, I live in Henley now, and you can walk around and you can see your mates from Coop in 2016 and be like, yeah, we're still on good terms, no matter whether it was a gold medal or a bronze medal or an eighth or a DQ or whatever. Like, it's all pretty good. Yeah, I'm guessing.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's an awesome answer. Like, you can't really, it's not like go back with 2020, but go back and be like, bet on the boat, bet on Oxford in 2016 or something like that.
We did. we tried all of that, and like looking back at that type of stuff is really hard, because actually the bit moving forwards is always like, we probably did the best that we could in the position that we were at that point.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, we could have gone to head of the Charles of the year early, and you're like, we didn't have $7,000 to splash on a trip to America the year before, or we should have just invested $15,000 in one of these lenses rather than renting it all the time. And you're like, didn't have $15,000 to invest in a lens. And it's always that bit of like, you can go back and look at it and be like, oh yeah, we should have done this bit, or we should have tried to get in there with this event a little bit early. And you're like,
I do.
Because I would probably weren't able to, because we weren't in the position.
Yeah, I get frustrated, and you look back and why didn't we do this sooner? And I just think if you look back and think, did we do what we thought was best with the knowledge we had at the time? And if we did, then we couldn't have done any better than that. But with the going back in general, like, you know, like you said, like, I think that's an awesome point to make. Like, the results are not everything. Like, the people and the experiences are, and focus on having the best performance you can, but take a second to look around you and enjoy where you are.
Yeah, so AllMarkOne tripled in size when I stopped coxing, but I don't think I'd ever go back and take away that final year of coxing that I did, because of like it sounds bad, but it kind of like legitimizes, it like helps legitimize you as a person, and just like, oh yeah, that person did this, and then this and this and this and this and this, and you're like, okay, well, like that final step could have been the like final key to unlock this event or this relationship or this friendship or whatever. And we've got a really good like close bond now with the team at BUCS, and I don't know how much of that was my final year racing at BUCS that had to deal with how close we are with them now.
Yeah,
you can go back and be like, we probably could have made more money if I just quit, and you're like, yeah, but we probably wouldn't have had this and this and this. So.
Yeah. Awesome. I've got one more question. Who's your rowing idol, or the person that you've looked up to during your rowing career or post-rowing career?
That's really hard. I'm not sure. My idols tend to be business idols that I then try and bring into rowing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I look up at Ben Francis, the owner of Gymshark.
Of course.
And I'm like, okay, how do we take something like a little bit from what he did and put it back into rowing? And I think that's might just be like an automatic mindset, but it's a bit like when we go back on it earlier, being like, if I kind of follow or try and follow in someone's footsteps, I'm always going to be a bit behind. Whereas if I take what someone else has done, not in rowing, and try and put it in, maybe I can be the first one to do that.
I think rowing's so into as well. They say like the people who find rowing as 14 and that's all they do their whole life. So to find things outside of that is rare.
And pull that back in, whether it's so like there's Ben Francis from Gymshark, and like there's a few others. Like I've got there's a big car modifier in Milton Keynes called Urban Automotive. There's a guy called Simon who runs that, and look up to him quite a lot as well. Of just like, and again, just someone that's kind of like disrupted the community they're in, and then built a whole new set around what they think is a good idea. Trying to do the same thing here.
Awesome.
Wicked. Rory, thanks so much for coming on and having a chat with us. You were actually one of the first people that started supporting the podcast from like the from the first episode. We could just see that like you were following closely like what we did, and like just really appreciate the support. So it was great to obviously like meet you for the first time on Nat Schools, and let's see what we can do in the future, and let's see how Rowgear and AllMarkOne can hopefully help each other.
Yeah, awesome stuff. Cheers.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm sure we'll probably see you on Saturday at Marlet. But hopefully Emmy goes well for the summer, and fingers crossed you get those GB events.
Yeah.
I think that'd be awesome.
Awesome. So on that note, easy there.
Cue the music.